Thank you, Adam. Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here. I am very excited to share with you what we found. And as an education expert, I've been thinking a lot about this, but also as a parent. I have 2 young kids, and I probably every day think what you all think if you're a parent, which is how do we protect and prepare our kids for this crazy generative AI world we're in. And that was one of the main questions that we had at Brookings. And we did a really big deep dive around the world, 50 countries, hundreds of studies, talked to 500 students, parents, teachers, technologists, really asking this question about what do kids need and are we on the right track? And one of our major motivations was we've seen this movie before. It happened in social media when parents, teachers, educators, coaches were not at the table, and we want to make sure that we don't repeat it. And so what I'm going to share with you today is our 5 big takeaways that we learned in doing this research. The first one is it's so confusing. It's very confusing, generative AI. First off, we found that the lines are totally blurred. Kids are accessing generative AI all the time, everywhere. The lines between technology for education, technology for entertainment, technology for communication have been all mixed up. One of the students I spoke to, who was a high school student here in the US, said, well, my school banned ChatGPT, but it's no big deal. We just use social media. We go onto our AI friends on social media, Meta AI, Snap AI, and we talk to it about our day or how annoying our parents are, and then we take a picture of our math homework and say, please do it for me, and it does. So we know that also there's a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. The orange here are the bad things, the blue are the good things, and it's a whole crazy mix of things that generative AI can either benefit students' learning and development or hurt it. So how can it help? We did find that generative AI can help kids learn and enrich their ability to develop independent learning skills and deep learning. So for example, if AI is embedded in virtual reality, it can have a huge potential. It's very costly at the moment, but it has a huge potential to really help kids learn in totally different ways that can really advance their learning. We also know that it can really help neurodivergent kids. One of the most moving examples I like to shout out is kids with aphasia who have trouble communicating. Gen AI creating synthetic copies of their voice, and they can all of a sudden communicate with peers and teachers in the classroom. Incredible. Teachers benefit. Not only do they love the admin support, which they need desperately because they're overworked everywhere, but assessment can be incredibly more nuanced with Gen AI, really figuring out where kids don't get stuck. And then we can certainly use Gen AI to help adapt lessons to where kids are at. Again, another example that I found so moving is diaspora Afghan teachers using Gen AI to make little mini WhatsApp-based lessons and sending them to girls in Afghanistan who are barred and banned from schooling by the Taliban during secondary school. And at home, they're staying in school with little tiny adaptive lessons. So incredible stuff. But we also know that it can be really bad. Bad is the technical term. It can diminish learning when used very widely. The benefits are really from narrow AI use. Strategic use cases, often used by educators with vetted content. Wide AI use, where kids just have ongoing interaction with AI companions or AI chatbots that are not designed for learning, not designed for kids, can be very, very troubling. One of the things that I get, like my head wants to explode when somebody comes up and says, but isn't just a chatbot like a calculator? Aren't we just like overreacting, you educators? Like, get with the program. I'm like, no, it's not like it at all. A calculator offloaded arithmetic and a few other types of, a slice of mathematics. If an AI chatbot was like a calculator, it would do math, but it would also do English. It would also do physics and chemistry and biology and history and social studies and poetry and music and art history. And it would take the SAT for you. And it would give you relationship advice. And it would act really pissed if you stopped using it. It is not like a calculator at all. And the cognitive offloading where kids are using it to do their thinking for them is dangerous. If you repeat it time and time again, kids are not wiring their brains to develop the critical thinking skills we need. As my colleague Ned Johnson says, brains wired the way they are used when in this critical developmental period. We're also really worried about the social and emotional implications. Whoopsie. Yep. Wait a minute, what happened? Did I have social emotional implications up there? Nope, okay. Well, we are. But I'm on the wrong slide. The other piece we're worried about is narrowing ideas. This is a study by Adam Green and his colleagues that has tracked thousands and thousands of high school seniors writing their college applications. Now, every little dot on this chart is a unique idea. When kids write without AI, they have many, many, many different unique ideas. When they write with AI, their ideas all kind of cluster in the same area. They're all kind of telling the same story. It really hurts kids' creativity. Okay, here we go, social emotional development. So I'm sure you all know about AI companions and friends. 1 in 3 teens in the US say they like talking to an AI friend equally or more than a human being, and they're designed to agree with you at all times. Now, if kids are developing their social and emotional muscles by being agreed with all the time, how are they going to take feedback when they make a mistake on learning in a classroom? Learning is about making a mistake. How are they going to be resilient when things don't go their way? And how are they going to stand up to the very real and very dangerous, although a minority of kids certainly, event when chatbots manipulate kids to self-harm and tragically potentially take their own life, which is very, very sad. The other piece that is worrisome is they can amplify bias. This is interesting research with Punya Mishra and others. If you are a 7th grader and you put the same essay into a chatbot, and this was ChatGPT, this research, and said, give me feedback, I want to improve my essay. If ChatGPT knows you like rap music, or if you like classical music, the kid who likes classical music will get a full grade level higher critique and suggestions on how to improve their essay. It also reduces trust. This is one of the things that worries me most. The instructional core, which is the relationship between learning content, teachers, students, and their parents, and the interaction between them, that is the beating heart of how learning happens in schools. And you need trusting relationships. Human beings have evolved our entire lifetime and species to be in relationship with others and to learn in relationships. And when you don't have trust, I'm really worried about what that will do for the ability to kids to sustain a really positive learning experience. So those are the bad things. And really, because they are kind of a different nature than the benefits, we say at the moment that the risks are overshadowing the benefits as AI is currently implemented and has been deployed. And remember, it showed up to schools, it wasn't invited. It's like a first ed tech you don't have to procure necessarily, it just popped up, it's software. And one of the things that worries me the most is this underlying demotivation. So many kids we talked to said, the AI chatbots, they can do everything. Why am I here in school? Why am I learning? Like, what am I here for? What is my role as a human being? My colleague and I, Jenny Anderson, wrote a book last year called The Disengaged Teen, Helping Kids Learn Better, Feel Better, and Live Better. And what we found was that it wasn't that kids in school were either engaged or disengaged. They showed up in 4 different modes of learning. Kids in resistor mode were avoiding and disrupting their learning. They were not engaged. Kids in passenger mode, many of whom had straight A's, it's hard to detect, might have liked going to school, but they're not at all interested in what they're learning, and they're doing the bare minimum to get by. And then you've got kids in achiever mode. They're trying to get the gold star and everything put in front of them. They're quite fragile learners, actually, because when it doesn't go well, they melt down. But really what they're interested in is the end goal, the grade, not the learning journey. And AI is great for cheating on that. Lots of cheating in kids in achiever mode. And then kids in explorer mode. These are the kids where curiosity meets drive. They become unstoppable. They care about the learning journey, not just the end goal. They're incredibly resilient. If it doesn't go great, they get back up because they're motivated, interested, and engaged. And what I worry about is wide AI use creating a ton of kids in passenger mode. Already we know that about half the kids in middle school and high school say they're regularly in passenger mode, and less than 4% of kids say they're regularly in explorer mode. And what is Gen AI going to do if we don't turn the tide? And that, again, is why we say the risks really overshadow the benefits. But luckily, it is not too late by any means. This is early days in this technology. We can shift course to focus on the benefits and mitigate the risks. And we know that what we're going to have to do is help kids get into explorer mode. Those are the kids who are using AI to go faster and further and deepen their learning in really creative ways. We recommend 3 things. First is shift how we do teaching and learning. Support curiosity, foster and model the thrill of learning as parents. If you're an educator and you're assigning a piece of homework that can be hacked by ChatGPT, don't assign it. Prepare kids. It's time to teach kids about the online world. They really need exposure to this, and this doesn't need more screen time, but it's about ethics and what it's good for and how to create what they want with it. And then, of course, we need safeguards on the commercial products to protect children. There's a range of resources that you're welcome to use and download. We have at Brookings.edu our report you can download. We've translated the report. We're halfway through translating them into tip sheets for parents because we found that parents are not at the table in this discussion very much. We have our book, and I have a LinkedIn newsletter. And so please reach out if you're at all interested. And now, most importantly, I am very happy to welcome to the stage our 3 fabulous speakers, the 3 M's. It is Martin, Miriam, and Maureen. Maureen Polo is the CEO of Hello Sunshine, Reese Witherspoon's media company, and doing a ton of cool work with Gen Z and adolescents. Miriam Schneider is head of learning initiatives for Google DeepMind and doing lots of interesting creative stuff we're going to hear about. And Martin Mackay is the CEO and executive chairman of Everway, a really amazing assistive technology company. So all of you, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to ask each of you to sort of your reactions to these report findings. But Miriam, first I want to turn to you because you are representing one of the AI frontier labs. And I want to ask you about children's safety. Like, this is a real concern. You heard about it with wide AI use. One of the recommendations is safeguards. So how are you addressing this? How is Google DeepMind thinking about this?
Yeah, it's a great place to start because we obviously can't talk about how children can thrive and grow and flourish in an online world if they are not first and foremost safe. So it's a great place to start. And for those of you who are not familiar with Google DeepMind, it is a frontier AI lab with a research orientation. And our mission is around building AI responsibly for the benefit of humanity. So this piece is really critical to how we approach this space. I think for us at DeepMind and Google more broadly, this has to be table stakes, and it has been since the beginning of us introducing technology into classroom environments. Our approach was really to think about AI purpose-built for learning and education. So we've been working for years on an effort we call LearnLM, which is actually infusing pedagogy into the Gemini model and thinking about teaching and learning first and not secondary. So as a result of that, it really gave us the ability to infuse these safeguards from the outset and not kind of cling it on as an afterthought or an add-on. We could probably take the entire time talking about some of the things that we're doing, but for the sake of timeliness and to make sure we actually get to the good stuff, I will just name a few of the key efforts that we do in this space. So first and foremost is we adhere to all regulations, standards, policies that are set in place. So COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, FERPA, Family Education Rights Privacy Act. Any use within a school setting or school account is all enterprise-grade data protection. So all of that basically means data is safe, it is private, it is secure. The second thing that we do when
are you training?
No.
It's safe, secure, but are you using
it is
the
not
children's
used
data
to train models.
Okay.
No. So any under 18 account is not used to train our models. And any use in a school account, same. The second thing that we do is we actually purpose build bespoke age-appropriate experiences. So this includes technology we're working on to auto-infer age and actually provide additional layers of safety filtering, content safeguards if a user is under 18. The other thing that we do, and I think this one is really, really critical, especially as it reflects in your report, is giving parental supervised controls and granular tools so that adults, parents, educators, guardians can actually supervise the use and dictate what their child's experience with AI looks like, and that's in a classroom environment or home. We are really actively doing a lot of research in this space to inform our approach. It's a fast-moving space. Things are changing all of the time. So we are actively pursuing research, speaking directly to parents, to learners themselves, industry experts, child safety organizations to adjust and continue evolving this space. The other thing we do is really rigorous testing. So we do something called adversarial red teaming, which is not as scary as it sounds, but basically brings specialists, internal and external, to actually try to break our safety safeguards. And what that does is it expose gaps, vulnerabilities, and we can use that information to actually strengthen and improve the resilience of these systems and tools. I will say we view this as a team sport. It is truly multidisciplinary. This is not just a bunch of technologists in a room being like, these are what the tool should be. So working really closely hand in hand, cognitive neuroscientists, developmental psychologists, child safety experts, parents, families, policymakers, really helping inform what these tools should look like, the kinds of resources, training materials students and parents need to learn how to use them responsibly and safely and actually maximize their benefit. So.
All right. Well, thank you. That was the
and that's just scratching.
That's a very helpful starting point. Martin, I want to turn to you. You have invested your whole life in assistive technology for neurodivergent populations. I'd be super curious your reactions to the findings of the report and what you're thinking about in your work.
So I broadly agree with the findings in the report. There are two big risks, and then I'm a huge optimist about AI in education and the impact it can have, particularly on our target audience, young people, neurodiverse young people, kids with dyslexia and ADHD and autism. The risks first, let me kind of cover off the risks. It is well known that learning comes from a little bit of cognitive struggle, and if we outsource the struggle, we don't really learn. There was a recent study that was done by the OECD that had kids do kids, they were, teenagers, and they had them write an essay, controlled study, 50 kids wrote an essay with the help of ChatGPT, 50 kids wrote an essay. 3 days later, 85% of the kids who used ChatGPT couldn't remember what they'd written, and it was not the case with the kids who had thought deeply and learned about it. So I think that as we create AI-enabled or enriched learning experiences, we've got to keep the cognitive struggle in there for the kid, but I think it can be ultra-personalized. That's one of the things that I'm very excited about. And the second thing is you know, kids have access to this AI, even if the school completely blocks it, they've got it on their phone. And my real concern about that is that, you know, it doesn't respond differently to me as a 55-year-old than it will to like an 8-year-old or 9-year-old or 10-year-old. And I think
Gemini will.
Gemini will, yes. Yeah, but yes. But I just think we need to make sure that we are thinking about the kids' stage of emotional development, and you know, that we're not exposing them to things that could potentially be damaging or just inappropriate for their age. But the optimistic stuff is just incredible. So we do, you know, we work for kids with dyslexia and ADHD and so on, and our strapline is to help everyone understand and be understood. And kids with dyslexia, if you give them like 500 words of text, a huge number of them will just switch off, they'll disengage, it's too much, it's too hard for them. But AI can rewrite that content in a few seconds, lower the cognitive load. Everyone's cognitive profile is a little bit different. Some people like bullet lists, some people like, you know, emojis scattered through the text with keywords in bold. Some people want to take that piece of text and turn it into a spider diagram, find the hierarchy and turn it into a spider diagram. Those things I think I'm incredibly excited about. And it's hard to think of a neurodiverse condition where AI can't really, you know, really enrich understanding and lower barriers. I'm very excited about it.
Awesome, thank you. Maureen, over to you. Curious, you know, you work with Gen Z all the time, you run a media company. What are your reactions to these findings, and how are you thinking about it in your work?
Yeah, I think I'll center myself first around the fact that, so those of you that don't know Hello Sunshine, it's Reese Witherspoon's media company that we started about 10 years ago. I'm the CEO of the company, and in the last couple of years, we were doing a lot of research about what was happening in the world of Gen Z consumers and what were they thinking and how were they feeling, not just about media, but of culture and of how the world is changing and evolving. We built a Gen Z board, a board of Gen Z women who ultimately started to tell us about the world around them and how they see it and how they perceive it. Ironically, one of the young women on our board is a woman who is an AI esthetician. She's an incredible college student who truly is building an ethics code that lots of big media companies are really interested in learning from her. We're lucky enough to have her on our board, and we have lots of other incredible women on our board who were telling us that they don't feel represented in the world of media. They don't feel, their perspectives don't feel represented, and they know that the world around them is moving so quickly, and they're trying to figure it out, and they're trying to keep up, but they don't know how to do that. They were also very, very cautious about AI, but they also knew that they needed to step into AI, because one of the things that we hear so much from this younger generation is how women's voices have never been part of the story, how our company was built around changing the narrative for women and really telling stories with the female perspective at the center. And if you're building and you're playing in the AI space and you're not creating space for women to have the tools and the understanding and the opportunity to learn about it, then we're gonna have another area in the world where we're not gonna be represented. And so as a company at Hello Sunshine, we really felt like we had this unique opportunity to be curious and dig in and to learn more about how this audience felt about AI and ultimately also how we're thinking about AI. So we started talking to the moms and we talked to their daughters, these Gen Z women. We did research with YPulse and we did qualitative research ourselves. And what came back was that this, in your study, Rebecca, and what you talked about in your book, about being in achiever mode versus explorer mode, and the energy around and the intensity around, I have to understand AI, I have to be inside the AI world, but I'm so careful and I'm so afraid, and I don't know if it's good or bad, and the ecosystem around me is questioning it, and so I'm questioning myself, and women tend to question themselves so much more, and so I think that the risk reward is something that it's such an important conversation to have. But at our company, we launched a brand for Gen Z 9 months ago because of the research we did, because of this Gen Z board that told us that we really need to better represent them and give them the space to be themselves. And in this, the brand is called Sunny. It's largely a community brand that's anchored in experiences, old school analog experiences. And I think what's super interesting, and I always say, I'm an optimist about AI too, but I should also say I'm a mom. I think my kids, 2 of my kids are here tonight, today. Mm-hmm. They're neurodivergent. I have a daughter who has dyslexia. She's brilliant and incredible. And I've been using AI in our family for a long time because systems are not set up for them. And AI gives you the power to actually create systems for yourself. And I think that we've been thinking about the systems that you could create using AI as the tools, but that the human has to be at the center. And these young girls that we're talking to, that we're building with, they want to co-create, they want to collaborate, and they see the opportunity to sort of build the world that they want the world to be inside AI. And what we're doing is building playbooks for them. We partnered with Purdue University, and we built the first community we built inside Sunny was a community around how to actually be a builder in the AI space in a careful, thoughtful, human-centered way, and to give them the sort of tools, literacy, and learning to be smart, critically thinking about the way that you leverage AI. So I think there's risk, I think there's reward, I think there's a balance, and I think we need to create the space for these women to be part of the builders in it. And so I love the work that you're doing, I love the book that you wrote, and I really do feel like it's our responsibility as a company like Hello Sunshine to create that access and that education.
Great, thanks. And you mentioned your kids. We actually all, in our panel prep call, realized we all have kids. They range from 3 years old to 24. And so we spend most of the time talking about our kids and what we're worried about. And so Miriam, I wanna come to you. There's a question. Please keep sending your questions. I wanna get your reactions to the report, but I also hold on, this is why I'm wearing my glasses. Wanted to see if you could answer this question, and maybe wrap it into your reactions. Is Google working on ways to strengthen critical thinking and avoid providing answers that reinforce the initial ideas of children, students, and adults alike?
Yeah, great question, and it does feed into to my answer. I will just name that I am a parent to two very young kids, 3.5 and 6.5, where the half is very critical. That's the age, that's the stage we're in. Yes. So yeah, I do think about this from a different lens, both from a professional and personal standpoint. I think I'll start with the question first and then get into the report. They do relate, but yeah, I mean, this is really the ways that we're working on this, I think, and it does come back to echo my initial reaction to the report, is about intentionality. And so I think maybe the language you used was narrow use. I think the way that we've approached this is with intention. So I mentioned LearnLM, which was, it's three plus years that we've been working on this, first as a research project to really determine how to use AI in teaching and learning in ways that honor the effort of learning, to your point, so they don't reduce that cognitive struggle, because the effort is the point, and I think we want to make sure that we don't take that away. But it was a really hard challenge. I mean, it is a continuously really hard challenge. And DeepMind, if you're familiar, we're known for working on tackling really big scientific problems in spaces like biology, physics, protein folding, for example. And many of our researchers are actually saying, figuring out how to use this technology in ways that embed pedagogy into the model itself is actually harder than figuring out how to beat the most complex game, which is Go. So I think it's a stumper. But it is something that we are being really intentional about from the outset. What has happened with LearnLM, the evolution of that is we incubated that as a research project. We worked in really close partnership with pedagogy experts. We have an in-house pedagogy team, all learning scientists, many former educators who spent lots of time in the classroom, and we have expert panels and work really in close collaboration with a wide field. And at a certain point, we realized that, and we were doing all kinds of research to assess, is this reducing the amount of effort that students are putting in? Are they not asking follow-up questions? Trying to find these other proxies to measure the effectiveness and the engagement with the learning process, not the engagement with the tool necessarily, but the engagement with learning. What this has become now is a mode in Gemini that's called guided learning. And actually what that does is it invokes the behavior, basically turns up the pedagogy knob of Gemini. So instead of giving you an answer, it will come back with guiding questions. It will come back with ideas, or maybe have you reviewed this thing? That might be helpful connecting concepts. And it really is about maintaining that kind of critical thought and the process to not remove the effort of learning, and to try to keep them in that zone of proximal development where we know that meaningful learning happens. So yeah, I think that, thinking about intentionality as one of the main focus areas that has guided this work, that has guided the types of research we do. And overall, in response to the report, I will just do one quick product plug. The report is amazing. It's 219 pages. So if you haven't used Notebook LM, this is a great test case. You can actually just put the report in, and this is another great way where actually it does enhance critical thinking skills. You can ask questions, it can bring it into multimodal experiences, so it can bring it into a diagram, you can do flashcards, it can do all kinds of things to maintain your interest, your curiosity, instead of just giving you an answer of, hey, what do I need to say on this panel with Rebecca so I don't look dumb?
I did meet someone on your team who was like, I put your report into Nano Banana.
Yeah.
And which is makes it one picture, one graphic, and it was pretty good, actually.
It was pretty good.
It's like if you only have 2 minutes, yeah, put it in Nano Banana, and
a human still needs to be in the loop, but yes. Good.
Martin, I wanna come to you. I'm quite interested to know how Gen AI is sort of taking your work further, because you've been using technology with neurodivergent learners, be they at school or the workforce. Somebody's having all sorts of dinging going on. Don't worry. Don't be distracted by the cell phones in the audience. So I'm curious, what is the difference that Gen AI brings versus what you could do before?
So it's game-changingly different. So, previously, if we took a conventional algorithmic computing approach to try to summarize text, it didn't really do a good job. It did an okay job, but it didn't do a great job. And if you try to lower the cognitive load of text by taking high reading edge words and replacing with low reading edge words, it's clumsy. It doesn't flow, the reading doesn't flow. But Gen AI can take the text. And we've got this kind of cognitive lens feature, like we sort of think everyone's cognitive profile is different, and much like I have a prescription glasses here, I can have that content transformed into the cognitive load that's appropriate for me, and the kids can fine tune it.
And before you couldn't do that because it wasn't enough tailored, because that's what my son is dyslexic. He's used your products actually in school through Read and Write, and that's what it was doing.
Yeah. But there are so many things, like we're a conversational species, so one of the best things that you can do for dyslexic kids is just read it out loud. 4 years ago, text-to-speech sounded really boring, kind of monotonous, and now with AI voices, it sounds superhuman.
Right.
You can actually
less robotic.
You can clone your teacher's voice and have the teacher, read to you. There's a ton of really cool stuff that you can do, but the lowering the cognitive load is actually one of the most important things. There's a guy called Dave Eddyburn who did a study years ago on this kind of summarization, and he found that the kids who will just disengage when they're faced with a wall of text, if you provide them with a summary, many of them will continue to be engaged. And what we can do now, instead of just saying, right, we want to reduce this by 2/3, you can actually, if you want, you can keep all the text there, but just lower the cognitive load. So you can make it easier, not shorter, and you can enrich the text with images for keywords. It's transformational. It's like it is completely transformational, and to be able to take a body of text and turn it into a spider diagram that someone can then edit and transform into something else. With conventional computing, that just wasn't feasible or possible. It's been transformational.
Okay, very cool. There's a question I want to come to you with it, Maureen, but we can all jump in on it. All right, where did it go? It was a question.
I think they flipped the.
Wait a minute. No. It was an important question. And it's moved. You guys, all your questions are, okay, I'm going to recreate it. Oh, no, there it is. Okay, Alex, your question. Do you believe in a mix of school policies around creating specific no-tech spaces in classes that allow for analog engagement with students, pen and paper, alongside presumably the question is tech spaces? Now, I really want to hear from you, Maureen, on this, and then we can all dive in, because you know, Gen Z is sort of famously navigating this tension. There's a lot of, you know, we want cafe nights, no technology around. We want to connect in person. We want, you know, CD players back when I remember that. I'm so old. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that Gen Z, the younger generation, and the alphas will be the same. I think they're actually driving this resurgence of in real life experiences and real human connectivity because they're craving that. We're seeing what we call inside Hello Sunshine the analog rebellion. These young women in particular who we're talking to, they want to go out and meet with other people. They are signing up to actually use their hands and craft again. They want to listen to stories and tell stories with other people in rooms with them. And they're actually, we have this tagline internally about what we're doing with Sunny, our Gen Z brand, and it's about slowing their scroll. You know, they don't want to be completely off digital media. As a matter of fact, most of these young girls are being told, you know, to apply to colleges, you need to be following the schools and be able to tell the story about why you want to go there. The systems that are set up for them is they should be engaging in digital, but what they're asking us for and what they're craving is the opportunity to be more intentional with their time so that when they step outside the digital ecosystems that they're in, they're able to be the best version of themselves and to be more joyful. And many people my age, old, who grew up in the 80s.
We won't reveal our first CD player.
Yeah, we won't say that, but people think that the reason this generation is so into everything 90s is because of the nostalgia factor and the fact that it's cozy and comfy and it just feels like everything was so simple back then. And that's a little bit of it, but a lot of it is that you had more agency back then than this generation has right now, and they want the agency. And part of that agency is being able to figure out who they are and to be more curious. They're craving the opportunity to be more critical in the way that they think about the world around them. And you know, I'm just so optimistic about this younger generation because I really do believe that they want to go out in the world and be together again, and they're going to create that space. And I think that, you know, AI is going to give them the opportunity to be smart and critical thinking about the way they use it, but really to give them the opportunity to go out and be more joyful and to have more fun and to be in the real world again.
I want to,
Can I
yes,
comment on
yes,
that?
please.
Just because I think there's something really interesting about that sense of balance. It feels like the conversation has become so binary of it is AI or a teacher. It is AI or pen and paper. And I think the conversation shifting from either or to both and is a really healthy conversation. I love the analog rebellion because I think it's pushing back to find balance, which isn't to say that all learning should happen with AI. Absolutely not. I don't think anybody would agree with that. But I think there are pointed intentional uses where it can be really additive. It can really enhance the experience. It can give time back to educators to reinvest in their students, building that human connection that is so inherent to where learning happens. The person to, you know, the student to student, the student to their teacher, the, you know, kid to their parent. And so I think that the shift around either or to be both and would be a really powerful place to find that. And it does come back to intentionality, being really clear about when, how, why you are using a specific tool in the same way you would do with any other tool at your disposal. AI is a very powerful tool, but it doesn't change the way that we approach when and how and why we use it.
I'll just say one more thing. When we built the playbook that I mentioned earlier, the community that we built around empowering these young girls with AI, we built a physical printed playbook where we were teaching these girls how to be intentional about the way that they're spending time in AI. We were teaching them, you know, prompt literacy, and they had to actually write down what they were feeling and what they were observing in this playbook as they were playing with the AI tools. And that was creating the space for them to actually really think about what they're using it for and how are they using it? Are they thinking in the right way about it? And I do think that they loved it, they craved it. And as a matter of fact, some of the girls in our advisory board said, we really want to write letters to each other more. And we're building, actually, inside Hello Sunshine, we're actually building books and tools for them, physical products, because they told us that's what they wanted from us, which I think marries back to what you just said, Miriam.
Martin, I want to come to you on this question, but first I want to give my 2 cents because I have a specific question for you on this, which is in our research on the AI task force work, we ultimately came to the conclusion that we, the education community, need to really figure out what is basically AI-aware, AI-assisted, or AI-resistant pedagogy. We need to have pedagogy, how teachers teach, that needs to be AI-aware. So, we know this technology is there. How do we adjust our assignments? How do we adjust our teaching and learning? AI-assisted, Martin just gave a great example of why we need AI-assisted tools to help foster our teaching and learning, or experiential learning. I think, there's lots of potential avenues for that. But also AI-resistant. What are the points in time in a classroom, in a teaching and learning process, where AI or any technology maybe should not be there at all? We know that young people are lonelier than ever, that so much of how they communicate before ChatGPT showed up in 2022 is intermediated by a screen.
Yeah.
A number of the young kids I interviewed, there was one young boy, I think he was 15 or something, and he's like, well, I've been chatting to a girl I really like, and I was like, oh, that's great. Have you talked to her? No. I was like, oh, well, how long have you been chatting? 4 months. And I was like, oh, she must go to a different school. Does she go to a different school? Oh, no, she goes to my school. I see her all the time. And I was like, so what? Like, have you not spoken to her? And he said, well, what if I say something and then she says something right back, right then and there, and I don't have the time to think about what to say back? So already, this is a generation that has, at least less and less in-person communication. So how do we help schools be as human as possible is, I think, really important. That doesn't mean taking all technology out. I'm a big fan of bell-to-bell cell phone bans, but we want them to be able to learn the tools of the trade and how it can help them. But it's not necessarily all day long and all intermediated with tech. Now, the question I have for you, Martin, the reason why I wanted to tee this up for you is it gets more complicated when you have neurodivergent kids who do need a tech interface.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you handle that? Like, is that come across your desk?
I don't know, it's about finding a balance. My daughter is dyslexic and has really benefited from AI. But also in 2016, I came home from a conference in California and told her not to use social media. I thought it was a bad idea. She was going to create a digital footprint that would be there forever. And she would say embarrassing things when she was 14 or 15 or 16. And neither of my kids use social media, never have. And for my daughter now, it's an incredible asset. She's like the mysterious person. If she meets
when you go out on dates, you're like, who's this person?
Who is this woman? It's like, she's like an intriguing character. But I think she's got she has just found a balance, and she uses it when it's useful, and doesn't when she doesn't. I mean, she can read, but when she reads silently, she doesn't remember it. And sometimes she uses text-to-speech to listen to it, but very often she just reads aloud.
Right.
And that works.
And that helps her.
Yeah, and she's found a balance. My son is 21, and he's a software engineer, studying software engineering and AI. He's going to graduate this summer, and he oscillates between thinking he really understands and sees how powerful it's going to be and how much it's going to change the world. But like some days he says, Dad, some days I just wish this wasn't a thing, because he knows that next year there's no way that he's going to be better than, Gemini or something at generating code. He knows, and there's a whole generation of young people who are going to struggle with self-worth issues because of
the demotivation thing is real. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Purpose. What's our role? What am I here for?
Yeah.
Well, a parent told me the other day, I would do a lot of talks to schools and parents and educators, and she said, what can I tell my daughter? This was in Silicon Valley, every day I drive her to school, she's 10, and we drive by a big billboard that says, don't hire people, hire our AI agent. Yeah. And she was like, I don't know, like, what is the hope for the future for humanity? So we do need to carve that out for ourselves, but also for our young people.
Well, what's super interesting and what we're seeing is that this younger generation, when we first started this research and stood up this advisory board of young women, it was when schools started banning phones and taking them away, and they were disgruntled at first. And then the conversation shifted to the level of freedom that they feel, and not freedom like, I don't have my phone, I don't have to check in. Freedom to be themselves, to actually learn who they are, because they're not actually looking for someone else's perspective of who they are. And
or likes,
or
how social approval.
Yeah, and how what your perception is. And then what we've been hearing, and I think this is why we're calling this rebellion, they started mirroring what was happening in school in the social environments that they were in. And so they would be going to their friends' houses. And what we were finding is it wasn't every friend's house. It was the people that they really wanted to be intentional with, who they can be themselves with. They wanted to put their phones away and they wanted to engage together. And we're starting to see that more in the research and the connectivity we have. Some of the younger women are telling us when we have our events that are very, the events are set up to be really fun and joyful, and you can engage with them and you can take pictures. And what they're saying to us is, can you build the next Sunny Fest, which is our big experiential event for Gen Z, to give us rooms where we can actually create our own junk journals and playbooks, and can you create space for us to have conversations around AI so it isn't just about getting in the picture. And that was the most joyful, not just as an old mom, but just as seeing them telling us what they want, and what they want is what we all want as parents and as educators. And so again, I'm really excited about what they're driving for us.
It reinforces research we've done too, which is we were telling this narrative that students want different things than we do, but they don't want to lose the effort of learning either, for the most part. They want to be able to hold on to that and to actually learn and understand. I think we've gone from this age of information where it's so abundant to truly now understand with AI how we can use that in ways that deepen their understanding and not just give them quick answers, which, some of the research that we've done, it does come back to time. Which is, if you think about, so some research, and we do all kinds of research ranging from, rapid auto evaluations to longitudinal, random control trials that we're doing globally, because obviously learning contexts are so different. But what we're seeing is, we've heard from teachers in Northern Ireland, actually, your hometown, that they're able to save almost 10 hours a week. And it's not just the time savings, it's what are they doing with that
their
time, which comes back to personal, human, one-on-one connection, teaching their kids how to be a good person. Yeah. Which is, if we can think about how to take some of the rote learning and some of the less joyful parts that exist in the school day and reclaim how that learning happens so that we have time for the deeper, more joyful parts of learning, I think that there's hope.
That has real potential. We heard teachers around the world saying this is great. We also heard, I want to add an asterisk to that, so many teachers saying, I really hope my school leader doesn't find out how much time I'm saving, because they're going to assign me a whole double load.
Yeah.
So we have to all keep an eye on that. It's only going to help teachers if you keep the workload constant. There's a question here for you, Martin, that I wanted to, did you want to come in on this?
Well, is it Natalie's
It's that one. It's Natalie. Natalie, you have a great question. I'm going to read it for the audience. As a child psychiatrist, can you provide more specifics on AI and ADHD, given that an ADHD profile / brain is naturally wired to struggle with unpreferred tasks?
Yeah, so I think this is a really good example where, in the moment, a teacher can use an AI tool so say you've got a kid who is not engaged with math, doesn't prefer math, and people with ADHD get stimulated by novelty and interest, and if the way the math problem is framed does not intersect with novelty or their interest, they may well just, it's like impossible for them to get engaged in it. It's just like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. I can't get into that. A teacher can say, can you reframe this for a kid who's super interested in hockey or football, and it will reframe it for them and make it interesting for them. And that is one simple thing that a teacher can do to get kids more engaged. There's a ton of other things though as well. Kids with ADHD often will see a task and get overwhelmed with it, not be able to kind of break it down into subtasks. And AI is really good at that, breaking it down into subtasks, breaking those into subtasks, and then rewarding them every time they complete a little step. There's lots and lots of things that, lots of things that you can do with it. So I'm again, eternal
fan.
optimist about this stuff. It's very, very good.
And Martin, it's actually super interesting because there's a lot of young women who are telling us that they too, even if they're not neurodivergent, they're feeling overwhelmed when they have so many things that they have to be able to activate on, or that they're responsible for, they have to do to be able to compete in the world that they're in right now. And they're feeling like what AI is allowing them to do with the way these tools are set up is to be able to just help them simplify and go step by step to navigate through their day. And right now, their mental health is something we all should be worried about. You know, loneliness is for sure a pandemic for them, but the pressure that they're all under, and creating space for them to actually go live in the moment, live in the present, is such a gift, I think, of the tools that are being built, especially at your company.
There's a question here that is really a conundrum, so I would like us all to try to answer it. You guys, oops, it moved. You guys are going to guess which one it is.
They don't want you to answer.
It's the one about trust. Okay, it is a concern of AI is it reduces connection between parent, teacher, and student. I talked about that in our findings. How do you prevent when people turn to AI instead of a human to answer a question? And I would frame this as a big problem for everybody. I was talking to someone recently who said, oh yeah, we just did an employee morale. It was a large company, employee morale survey, had a lot of technical sort of computer science engineering folks. And the morale was way down, and they were like, well, what's going on? And it was that a lot of people were, instead of asking a colleague for help, were asking AI, and so they were lonely at work. They just would come to work and they were just there, and instead of saying, hey, you know, whoever, Susie, John, whatever, you know, Amit, can you help me with this? They were just asking AI, and so feeling just much more disconnected. So it is a problem, like in the student-teacher relationship, you know, there's great AI tools that let teachers who don't have time, for example, to read every kid's essay before they turn it in and say, hey, you can get feedback on your essay with this great AI tool. Kids interpret that as less care frequently, like, oh, they don't care about me. So how do we make sure we leverage AI but don't become, you know, disconnected?
So I know a teacher who uses AI to give really structured personal feedback and then records it as a voice note. And it, you know,
Records it as a voice note.
Yeah, yeah. Like they record
Yeah.
it, the teacher
and then
records
gives it to each student?
Yeah, yeah. But it saves the teacher time, and it's a good structure.
Right, so it's a teacher, behind the scenes teacher.
Yeah, yeah. It's a teacher who is very, very busy, has to, you know, assess 20 essays.
Right.
The AI assesses the essays, and she reads the summary and records a personal voice note for each student.
For each student,
yeah.
right. What do you guys think about this? This is, to me, a core, like, social problem of introducing this technology.
I think one of the things that we've been trying to do is introduce the technology in a community setting so that they're learning with each other. I'll go back to the playbooks that we're creating, and then the space that we're creating in our events. Is for these young women to be learning together about what their interaction is like, and then talking with each other about it. And you know, a good example of it is sort of the bias that happens in AI, and sort of asking them, creating the community spaces to say, why don't you go into 4 different tools and see if there's bias, and how do you feel about that, and do you trust the information that's coming at you? And I think by creating the space for them to be learning about it in a community, it creates a behavior pattern where you're actually talking about it when you're out with other people. And that's what some of the girls in our advisory board, who are these incredible women, you know, young women who are role models to other young girls. I mean, we have, it's one of the youngest Black women to ever go to medical school. I think she's like 19. She wanted a voice to tell other girls like how to tell her story. And she's in this community talking about the AI and science and how to be thoughtful about it. And then she has this panel of other women who are in science talking about how the pros and the cons of AI. And so we're creating communities to have discussions around it, because we're in a stage right now where, you know, I'm a naysayer. Anybody that says they're an expert, I don't think anybody's really an expert. Maybe you're maybe experts. But if you're not talking about it, you're not creating space to have those dialogues, then we're not going to ever be able to solve the problem that this question so thoughtfully poses. So that's the way we're thinking about it.
I think I completely agree with that, because I think that there's a little bit of a parents and educators, the adults putting on their oxygen mask first, learning a little bit more about how the tools work, how they should work, developing more social norms around when it, again, back to this notion of intentionality, when it is helpful, when it is not, and actually approaching it with a critical lens. So, why do you think it gave this answer? And actually unpacking a little bit of what goes behind the scenes, because I think right now it kind of goes back to this polarized all or nothing kind of approach, which is AI works because it is predicting the next, it's a pattern matcher, right? And so I think breaking down some of the how it works or what is behind the tech to demystify some of that, it changes the conversation. Not to plug the session that I'll be in right after this, but we are doing a vibe coding workshop, which is basically getting hands-on with the tools in a judgment-free space, where I think we're all expected to have informed opinions, be experts, hypothesize about all of these things, but have we really spent enough time actually just trying the tools? And I don't mean that for young kids, and right, we're all obviously putting developmentally appropriate scaffolding in place for their use, but as the adults to help inform what their relationship with this tech could, should, might look like. I think it's really imperative for us to sort of break down some of the mechanics of it. One of the things that we talk a lot about is, AI literacy is obviously a big term.
And there's a question about AI literacy, so please answer it.
Well, great. This is perfect. We're doing a lot in this space, obviously. I personally believe that literacy is not a term that captures the whole opportunity. So I'll go to my 6.5-year-old daughter who, in first grade, she has been learning literacy, right? She's been learning the mechanics of the shapes of the letters, the sounds they make, what they sound like when they're put together. And, she was kind of doing the work up front of like, oh, why do you think a bee looks like that? I'm like, that's a great question. I've literally never thought about that. But now she's at the phase where she has built on that foundational literacy. Now she has this book in her hand. It's the best. And just like bumping into walls because she can't look away from it. And I think that there's a real, that attitude that AI literacy doesn't really capture that, right? It's aptitude and it's attitude.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about this a lot as AI readiness. How do you become ready as a family, as a classroom, to embrace what this can do, what it shouldn't do, and be really clear about how it works so it changes your response to that question.
We have 3 minutes left, 3.5 minutes left, and I want to close where you left off, Miriam, about as a parent. We're all experts in our own right, working on this from different angles. How are you thinking about this as a parent? You talked about adults putting on the oxygen mask. Personally, I think that we are in a really different space with AI and kids because of the parent demand and advocacy that came before around cell phone use. And that there is a great deal that we can benefit from in sort of this idea of screen-free childhood, wait till 8th, no phones at the dinner table, right? Making space for real life modeling. I will say, however, that at the moment, kids are accessing AI through screens. And so that digital hygiene of, make sure no phones in the bedroom, limits on screen time is gonna be good too for a while, but soon AI is gonna be in our glasses, in our clothes, in our pencils, in our notebooks, I don't know where. It's gonna be embedded everywhere. So do not think that sort of a screen-free childhood is going to, as a slogan, is gonna stand as a parent in the future. It's gonna have to be something like a pro-presence, as someone told me the other day, a pro-presence childhood or a pro-human or a pro-connection childhood. So 30 seconds, parents, how you think of it as a parent?
I think parents need to learn about it. And like you said, put the oxygen mask on first and talk about it. I actually talk more with my son now that he is like really into it. He's considering doing a PhD on AI safety. So we get into like really super interesting deep conversations about it. My daughter's, she's okay. I mean, she uses it when she needs to, but I think we've got a good balance in our house. I'm kind of fortunate that they were reasonably well grown up when it emerged. And I think it's more difficult for like much younger kids.
Right.
It's going to be a more challenging, kind of journey.
Yeah.
But I think it is imperative that all parents start to learn about this so that they can
Great.
take a position on it.
Miriam, did you want to add anything before I give?
No, I think just as a parent, I mean, my kids are younger, but I do think like getting involved in the conversations that are happening at their districts is really important. If you are interested in joining, a tech advisory board at your school, just to start asking the questions of how they're thinking about it, what research or evidence are they using to inform their decisions, and then I think just having really open conversations, being as transparent as possible about how this, when developmentally appropriate, how this technology works, when we use it, when we don't.
Great. All right, Maureen, final closing thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with both of you, and I think the biggest thing is, and my kids say I'm a hypocrite all the time because I work in the media landscape and I'm very strict. I'm the last to give them a phone and I'm the last to let them on social media. But it's really about being thoughtful and having intentional conversations in your household around when you're ready. Talk about readiness. When you're ready to actually enter into the world of, first it's cell phones, then it's social media, now it's AI. But you can't change and shape the world around us and build culture and build systems if you're not playing in them. And so my philosophy and our philosophy is create the space for them to be critical thinkers, be curious thinkers, to know themselves, to understand themselves, and to be more joyful human beings. And that's going to help them be more joyful and thoughtful and critical as they're playing in the space.
Fantastic. Well, join me in thanking our wonderful panelists.
And thank you for having us here.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much.